to just about get started. So as you can see from the slide in front of you, we're here to hear some of our alumni share their perspectives on internships and career readiness. We're going to allow each of us to introduce ourselves very briefly, first of all, and then we'll get started with a few questions which I have in front of me, and then we will have time at the end for some Q&A. So I think without further ado, I'll just say a big hello to everyone, and once again, thank you for attending. My name is Ed Holroyd Pearce. I am the co-founder and president here at Virtual Internships. Very brief background to me. Back in 2006, I co-founded a business that was really focused on internships and was taking people for in-person programs out in Asia. And during that process, we noticed how impactful and how amazing an internship could be for young people on their career trajectory. But we also saw all of the barriers, all of the clunkiness, all of the things that could go wrong. And, alongside that, costs, visas, etc. And we thought, actually as early as 2015, we thought there must be another way. And that way was, virtual internships. Basically, we are all about accessibility and bringing the most amazing and different and interesting work experience opportunities to people, young people, older people worldwide, to benefit their future career path and their employability. I'm glad that I filled a bit of time there because we have had a few more attendees joined us now. So if you're just joining, welcome. You haven't missed much. I've just introduced myself. I'm Ed Holroyd Pearce, co-founder and president here at Virtual Internships. And I'm going to hand over to Misaki, then Josh, and then Jack to just give us 1 to 2 minutes on themselves and their background. So Misaki, over to you.
Hi, thank you so much for the introduction. My name is Misaki Yamamichi, and I'm a partnerships account manager at Virtual Internships, but I'm here as a VI alumni today. So I joined Virtual Internships in 2018, where I interned at the e-commerce wedding dress company as a marketing and business development intern. And the internship was based in the UK. But my supervisor was based in China. It was an amazing experience. And my education background, I graduated from Seinangakuin University, where I gained my bachelor degree in English as a second language. And then I did my study abroad in the University of Winchester, where I got my master's degree in project management. And since then, I have always been in the education sector. And yeah, I love working for Virtual Internships, but I also love the program as well. So I'm really excited to talk about that as well.
Great. Thank you so much, Misaki. And we really appreciate you taking the time to, help us kind of bridge that gap. Like the team here at VI are real people. They also were at a stage when they needed work experience once. And it's really, really a pleasure to have you here. So thank you. And next up, I'm going to let Josh introduce himself.
Hi everyone, I'm Josh. It's great to be here. Thank you for the invite, Virtual Internships, and it's great to meet everybody else on the panel as well. So a little about me, I am a social media executive at a company called Get My First Job and the Talent People. We help young and disadvantaged people find their first jobs, whether it be through internships, work experience, all that type of thing. So it feels like a nice full circle moment to be speaking with Virtual Internship again. When I was at university, I did my virtual internship in 2020, the summer of 2020, with a art and technology based startup called BitGlim in South Korea. I was a digital media intern. I've always known that I've wanted to go into the creative media industry. It's a very competitive space. So obviously getting that practical hands-on experience and like the working environment is really useful. So it was one of the main draws for doing it. I was also studying at the University of Sussex at the time of doing it. So I graduated from there in 2021 with a first class degree in media and communications. And ever since, I've been working for startups, I've worked for a university, and now I am where I am, creating content, managing social media channels, and doing all of that ridiculous marketing stuff and TikTok galore. So yeah, I think that's me in a nutshell.
That's great, Josh. Thank you so much. And yeah, you can definitely help some of our, I know we've got a mixed audience today, some university representatives, a few students in there. So really helping to unpack that kind of gap of university and academics coming through to work experience and how you land your first job, really. And while we're here, huge shout out to one of our really significant partners, University of Sussex, that have been, first of all, amazing to work with, but have genuinely been super impactful for the lives of hundreds of young people by making this program available through the university in a kind of structured way. You'll probably note, or we may unpack later on, Misaki came as an individual applicant, found out about the program. Josh came through a partnership with a university, so we'll hopefully be able to sort of hear a bit more about that later. But right now, over to Jack. Take it away, Jack.
Good morning, everyone. So I'm Jack. I currently work at the United Nations Economic and Social Commission for Asia and the Pacific here in Bangkok in Thailand. So it's the evening where I am, so I don't know where you all are, but it's great to meet you. So just a bit about how I got here. I did my bachelor's degree at the University of Nottingham in the UK. I think I was very lucky to have gone to that university because I was able to do study abroad in Malaysia, and a summer program in Indonesia. And I also did a variety of internships. So I did one with LD, for example, that was on a placement year. I did 3 months in Tanzania working on international development. So had a great experience at the University of Nottingham where I studied management, graduated from there in July of 2022. And I now study at Kyoto University in Japan, where I'm doing a master's degree in development economics. And it was there that I took part in the Virtual Internships China Skills Training Program. Probably no surprise that I chose that route, but I'm very interested in Asia in general and also in international development. So an internship with the British Council in China was very relevant to my career path and my interests. So look forward to sharing more about those in this session.
Thanks very much, Jack. And really, really great to have you joining us from Bangkok. I think it's my favorite city in the world. Actually, I used to live there. We haven't even swapped notes about this, so plenty of chatting offline to be done. But also, I would like to, I guess, do an equivalent shout out to the British Council as well, who've worked with us on some quite significant programming, again, for the benefit of students who would otherwise not have got those opportunities. So really, really great to be joined by you, Jack, with that hyper international perspective there, and hopefully we can dig into that in a bit more detail. So I'm going to start off with a pretty easy question, if I may. Just tell us a little bit about how you heard about virtual internships in the first place and what that process was like. And I'll go in this order for now, and then later on we'll mix it up. But Misaki, then Josh, then Jack.
Of course. So just to mention where I was at that point, I was a very, very needy international student who was looking for flexible work experience. So when I started virtual internships, I was finishing up with my dissertation. So it means that my visa will be expired quite soon. So I was looking for an experience where I can flexibly participating in the internship in terms of the location or when I can work. So I was looking for in-person internship around Southampton and Winchester, but it was quite difficult for me, especially because of my visa status. So I was thinking, what are the opportunities that can meet my needs there? And I was doing some research and I found out about virtual internships. So that's how I got there.
Great. Well, we're very lucky that you did find us, Misaki. It's been the start of a really great journey. But we're absolutely trying to position ourselves on, those search engines and making sure that we are discoverable for individuals who need this because of the flexibility and various other, situations they may be in regarding visas, regarding other time commitments and so on. So it's great that you brought that up. Josh, over to you.
Yeah, so I found out about virtual internships actually through the University of Sussex Careers and Employability Centre. So as a bit of background on me, I am what Sussex called like a first generation scholar. So I was at the university on a scholarship. I was the first person ever to attend university in my family. And then also coming from a lower socioeconomic background, the university were really excellent in providing me with like additional careers and academic support should I need it. And virtual internships was one of the platforms that I was signposted to in 2020. So after having explored it, I thought that it was a fantastic option because I really wanted to have kind of exposure to business acumen and have something to put on my CV that already complemented the theoretical nature of my degree. And because I knew that I wanted to work within the media industry, it's very like competitive. There's lots of young people wanting to go into that space. Competition is fierce. Kind of taking any opportunity you can get is fantastic, never mind with an international company and a startup no less, where you can actually see like real tangible impact in the work that you're doing. So yeah, that's how I found out about you guys.
Great, thanks Josh, and over to you, Jack.
So I was studying abroad in Malaysia from September 2019 to around June 2020, just as COVID hit. And as Ed was saying earlier, you know, Southeast Asia, it's a great lifestyle over here. And I was really interested in basically turning that into a career, finding ways that I could stay out here long term. So I was aware of the Generation UK program when it was running in-person internships in China. But when COVID hit, those were no longer possible. So when the program restarted in the form of the China Skills Training Program, and it was virtual, I was studying in Japan. It was a course run by Virtual Internships. So I absolutely signed up and took part.
Great, thanks very much, Jack. So next, I'd love to move on to just thinking about how your university prepared you for those first career steps. You know, just thinking about what they were able to provide in addition to or outside of the virtual internships program, and you know whether that met your expectations. I think there's a big conversation which we won't be able to go into in huge detail today about students and their expectations from universities, the return on investment that they're getting. And I'd love to just really hear from you guys as students of those institutions, how well you feel they met your expectations. Let's go reverse order. Jack.
So, I mean, when I joined university, I wasn't doing a business degree at my undergraduate level. I was very entrepreneurial, so I wanted to have those opportunities to take part, you know, in working for SMEs, small, medium-sized enterprises, or working in entrepreneurial labs, and not go to a university that was incredibly theory-based. And I do think the University of Nottingham did a very, very good job at transforming their degrees and making them more careers orientated through the years that I was there. So, for example, they set up grants like the International Work Experience Grant, which gave you about £1,500 to basically support the costs of moving abroad, or if you were doing an internship in the UK, they would support that. I was a Whitty scholar, so Sir Andrew Whitty, the former chief exec of GlaxoSmithKline, he set up an entrepreneurial scholarship, which basically provided mentorship and career support and funding for anything that I was interested in. And that supported my costs when I went to Tanzania. It helped me buy a car when I needed to do an internship as part of my degree. So yeah, I do think that the university was very innovative with support for students with careers. I think one of the most difficult things, though, for students that you'll find when you start your degree is that you have to do a lot of things yourself, you know, whether it's studying or coursework. There's no one there like in college or sixth form to give you that push and say, Jack, have you applied for this company? Or Jack, like, how's the search going? So that's one thing to be aware of, that you definitely have to be manage your time very well and be very motivated, because no one's going to be there kind of giving you that pat on the back to say, you know, Jack, you need to kind of get this done or that sort of thing. So yeah, that was my experience.
Great, thanks, Jack. Josh, tell us about your experience at University of Sussex. Not just the virtual internship provision, but any other, interventions or help that they were giving you.
Yeah, absolutely. So as I mentioned before, I was like a first generation scholar. So there was like a bursary that came with that, which was really useful, which like provided me with the foundation to just kind of live more comfortably at university, I suppose, despite working 2 part-time jobs and getting involved in loads of student societies and then doing the internship as well. I was very proactive. I think that was just coming from my background though, of me wanting to really make the most of my time at university. Like, you only have a finite amount of time. I didn't want to leave like Sussex with any regrets, and they actually had a lot that was available for students. So I was in regular contact with the Careers and Employability Centre, and I believe they ran workshops on like academic skills and researching, which is very transferable for like the working world. They also helped review like your CV. Even still after leaving university, they have like an extended 3-year program where you can go back to them as an alumni and like access support if you need it. So just having like that friendly touch point that I could refer to if I was ever feeling like insecure about, am I doing the right thing? Like, there's nobody in my life that has like kind of followed this path before me that I could like kind of take my inspiration or information from. So they were really supportive in that sense. But then also I was just incredibly proactive myself in once I find out about an opportunity, I'm just gonna tunnel vision straight towards it and really try my best. So yeah, there was the Careers and Employability Centre. My actual degree in itself was like part theory, part like practical as well, since it is media, and I really liked that. I didn't want it to just be like purely theory based. But there were like then opportunities through like student societies that would be funded by the university and the Students' Union that then helped supplement my experience and help me grow as a professional then, and gave me all of those transferable skills too in moving on ahead to the working world as well. So I think all of that combined together, like really well-rounded support, was really beneficial.
That's really great, Josh. Thank you. I mean, it does sound like you are hugely proactive. So well done for doing that. But, also sounds like Sussex had a very full suite of provisions ready for students. So yeah, absolutely well done. I am going to ask you guys all in a minute about whether there were peers, either, classmates, students, or other people from your social circles who didn't do quite so well. Or didn't manage to find internships. But I mustn't miss Misaki out on this question, even though it was a little while back. How did your university prepare you? What provisions were there? And particularly maybe from the international student perspective, how was it?
Yeah, of course. So I think the path to virtual internships was quite different from Joshua and Jack. So the Career Center Winchester University was not connected to virtual internships, but they gave me really, really good support in terms of how I can create CV, update my CV, Japanese style CV and English style CVs, quite different. And also they gave me interview tips. Interview is something that I have always been quite nervous about, especially speaking in English in a professional setting. At that point, it was quite nerve-wracking. So that was very helpful. And they gave me resources about employability in general and how you can look for entry-level job that's aligned with your interest and career goals. And that was quite helpful. And in terms of the support that I got from faculty, so I studied project management, and project management's like really, really versatile, but it's really hard to decide which industry that you want to use your project management skills in. And the university was able to include the consulting project with Carnival UK. It was a logistics project management consulting project, and it was very useful for me in consolidating project management academic knowledge, and also just to see how project management skills is utilized in different industry, because for me, logistics industry is something that I've never thought about pursuing. So that was very, very helpful. So overall, the support from the university really exceeded my expectation, but what virtual internships really offered me was something additional that helped me stand out from other people who went through international education abroad.
Great. Thank you very much, Misaki. So now, yeah, I would love to invite you guys just to think about your peer networks, social circle, or perhaps, you know, friends from back home who maybe haven't had this opportunity in particular, but might have missed out on multiple internships. How, you know, in some ways, kind of what went wrong for them, or how do you think your experience differed from them? It'd be great just to hear a little bit about that.
It's interesting you should ask that, Ed, because I've recently been having a conversation with a friend of mine who didn't take part in any internships during university. And we're now just speaking about, you know, the differences in our trajectories in terms of our career, that, you know, he never went on to a graduate role. He went into a normal job outside of university, which is perfectly fine. But I think, you know, he's always wanted more. And, you know, he sees the sorts of opportunities that I have on, you know, these internships or these graduate style roles where you're given lots of extra responsibility, the opportunity to travel, and then the further opportunities that gives you later down in your career. And, you know, I think it's quite difficult for him to accept that he hasn't really got any opportunity to take part in that at the minute. But I think, you know, the benefit of doing an internship in that sense is that you really become aware of these ecosystems within companies. And for example, you know, the ability to adapt to a company's values, actually what it takes to get into these graduate roles, you know, what the managers are actually looking for, the type of people you're working with, and you begin to adapt yourself to these companies. They're, you know, generally these bigger companies are quite ubiquitous. They're quite the same in terms of what they're looking for. So if you don't have that experience through an internship in an earlier date, I think it can be quite difficult to understand these graduate role application processes, or actually understand, you know, the benefit of getting on these. And you know, for my friends, you know, who's done well coming out of university, he's now starting to realize that, you know, he wishes he'd known more about these graduate roles, or had the experience to get a graduate role a lot earlier on in his career.
Thanks, Jack. Thanks for sharing. Yeah, one of our colleagues, Gillian, describes it with a very useful slide that is, you know, your internship, and then your second internship, and your third internship, and your first graduate job, and your second graduate job, and, you know, making clear that it sounds a bit cheesy, but it is a journey. And almost the sooner you start that journey, you start to know which doors might be open, which doors may be closed if you take certain paths. And I think that's pretty much what you've just described there for your friend. I mean, fingers crossed for him, and it's never too late to start. We have plenty of people going for internships somewhat later in their careers, or, you know, industry changes, etc. But yeah, for sure. Thank you very much for that detailed answer. Misaki or Josh, anything that you wanted to add in terms of, you know, peers who haven't had as much exposure to internships?
Yeah, of course. I have something to add as an international student's point of view. So I was just looking back on the demand for internship in general in Japan, especially before 2020. So I graduated my Japanese university in 2017. So at that point, internship was not as common compared to now. And the fact that I was able to have international opportunity and increase my global fluency gave me such a competitive edge, especially if you're looking for international role in Japan. That's something that you really, really need, because studying abroad experience, lots of people are able to pursue that, but to be able to confidently work in a professional setting and understand how different culture like, you know, work differently. So for example, in Japan, you don't say the conclusion at first, you just like build up to it and say the conclusion. but in England, it's, you know, easy. It's okay to say the conclusion first and like bring up your opinion first and then explain later, these kind of like small things, but it's really, really important to understand the difference in culture in a work setting. So I think my friends who didn't go through internship experience as a student, they have fantastic opportunity. However, I think for all the people who go international role, they did go through some kind of work experience internationally.
Great, thank you, Misaki. And yeah, Josh, I'd love to kind of hear the same thing from you, but you know, particularly if you don't mind sharing, you know, as a first generation student, you know, whether there were additional barriers, maybe, you know, have your family talked about internships and work experience and how that maybe was a different conversation from others?
Honestly, my family, I never really had those conversations with my family because like neither of my parents had done an internship before. They both like did very like vocational style jobs after like leaving high school. So really it was just as much of a new experience to them as it was to me, but kind of like looking around and exploring all of my options, I quickly realized, especially like with the industry that I'm in, is that as great and as prestigious as like the degree that I have from Sussex is, I think there's this, and this might potentially be a hot take, but we've had like a history in the UK, or at least it used to be the case of, oh, you would go to university and then get a job more or less straight afterwards. Because like people with degrees, like it had a sense of like prestige. Now I feel like there's a lot of people like with degrees, it's heavily saturated, and I feel like just having that degree might not be like enough anymore. Like you have to be able to evidence like your skills and kind of your business acumen and your proactivity, which is why something like virtual internships is so important, because it gives you that platform to do that. But in comparison, like comparing my experience to my friends who might have just went to university, maybe for the experience of it, maybe for the partying, like the lifestyle, maybe they just wanted to kind of hold off becoming an adult for about 3 or 4 years. They had a great time at university, absolutely don't regret it, but it did take them significantly longer to find a job in an industry that they felt they were on a career trajectory towards, or that they were really passionate about. So they were having to start their internships after university and going through the motions already, whereas I had already done my internship in second year and was then able to like move straight into a full-time role after university without having to do that like gateway experience. So it definitely gave me a leg up in like a very competitive industry. So yeah, it was definitely beneficial for me to start, as you said, Ed, starting earlier really helps.
Cool. I love that term you used, gateway experience. I think I might steal that if that's okay. I think it's super useful to just start that process relatively early, you know, and I think there's nothing wrong with going into an internship or a work experience opportunity and saying, actually, this isn't what I want to be doing for the rest of my life. It's just as valuable, you know, for people to explore something and decide to go down a different route. But almost until you start to explore, then you don't know which routes are available. So excellent. Thank you very much, Josh. So I'm going to move on a little bit, but just while we're still on that kind of university piece, I'd like to just explore the academic transition to work. And my kind of hypothesis here, without wanting to brainwash you guys, would be that, you know, if you get some work experience while you're at university, it's probably a bit easier to take your academic knowledge and sort of secure it and make it useful in a work setting. Whereas if you keep the two in very separate boxes and you do your 3 or 4 year university degree, finish that, and then go into your first internship or your first graduate job, you've sort of, I don't know, separated the two. So I'm just interested in each of your experience of whether, I don't want to put it as black and white as was the stuff you learned in university useful, but more like, how did you use that, the academic knowledge from university? And then did you find the transition to work, relatively easy, bringing some of that knowledge with you? Just talk me through it. And why don't we start? We can start with Josh, Misaki, Jack, in that order.
Yeah, sure. So I think one thing that a lot of young people could probably do with a bit of support in actually is just recognizing the transferable skills they have. So as you said before, Ed, like no career is linear. It's like a wavy line. And people might often feel dejected if they want to get to a certain point in their career, but they feel like they're having to take a lot of twists and turns, discovering what is right for you. Is this skill that I'm building going to be relevant to the future? I think any experience that you have helps curate you into the person you're going to become in the future. So whether it's communication skills, intercultural communication, presenting, we have all of this from lectures and seminars. So being able to kind of showcase that on a CV or in an interview is really important. Could I get you to just repeat the final part of the question again, if you don't mind?
I think you've answered it, to be honest, Josh.
Oh, fair. Okay.
It was great. It was a very general topic was really just about that, bringing some of your academic knowledge into the workplace, and how, whether or not you felt you did that during an internship. Do you remember any clear examples of, I used the content from that project, or any little stories or anecdotes that you have around that?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So we on my course, we did a lot of analysis into kind of just digital culture in general. So whether that's audience segmentation, what people are doing online, how communities kind of evolve and form through social media, the impacts that can have on society. And then through my virtual internship, I was then able to use the practical skills of actually making an online video advertisement for this company based in South Korea, which was a really interesting experience to have to research who their target audience is, kind of find out their quote unquote consumer habits, and then create a piece of content that almost kind of bridges the gap between cultures, between the UK and South Korea. But yeah, I think I was able to implement a lot of the theory and frameworks I'd learned from my degree, through those practical exercises, and then through a final report that I then presented to the business stakeholders as well. So it was really just the cherry on top, really, I think.
Brilliant. Thank you. Misaki, anything where you remember sort of using those academic skills and bridging that gap through the internship?
Yeah, of course. So for me, virtual internships opportunity was perfect because it was project-based internship and I was studying project management. So regardless of what tasks I'm doing, I was able to think, okay, I have learned this at university. I'm going to today start using Gantt chart. Or maybe think about, Prince 2 Agile. There are so many different methodologies. How can I connect that knowledge with what I'm doing during this internship? So every day was really, really, every day was different, but every day I was able to think, what I learned at university and how I can put that into practice. And also feeding into what Josh said earlier about different competencies. I think it was a great opportunity to think about what I learned at the university about leadership and communication style, because as a project manager, these two career readiness competencies are extremely important, but there are no right or wrong way of sort of lead other people. As long as you can empower other people, it doesn't matter if you are extroverted or introverted. It can be, it can look like anything. I think every one of us have different leadership style and communication style. So it was perfect way for me to reflect on my traits and what kind of soft skills that I have that I want to bring into the future.
Great to hear. Well, I am about to ask you all about those soft skills, but I will let Jack just share any kind of that to answer that last question of mine, the academics crossing over to being used in the internship.
Yeah, I can think of one specific example. So I'm sure if there's any business students out there, you can concur that our degree is very theory-based and textbook-based. And sometimes it can be hard to imagine where the theories will fit in practice. So Maslow's hierarchy of needs, for example, is one. And when I was at the British Council, we were tasked with working with an NGO. And this NGO was essentially looking to come up with products or services that would improve well-being for employees in the law sector in China. So as you can imagine, one of the first things we were asked to do was to use Maslow's hierarchy of needs to basically evaluate what it is that Chinese employees valued, what they had already and what they were missing on this value chain. So yeah, definitely you will apply some of the theories that you don't imagine you could apply, or you wouldn't know where to apply. But I just want to touch on what Misaki and Josh said as well, just about leadership and things. I mean, when I actually went back into my studies, because I was studying after my virtual internships, it definitely helped me with my leadership, but in a sense that I'd seen ways that other people did things, and it made me confident that actually doing things out of the box and doing things differently, not necessarily from an academic standpoint, but from more of a business standpoint, which was more innovative, I guess, is okay. So when it came to things like group work, I didn't only have the understanding of how things worked in the real world, but I also had the confidence that it can work in practice as well. So I was able to apply those both, and it really, really helped me in the months following my internship when I went back into my studies.
Great, thank you for sharing that, Jack. Really inspirational for the audience and fellow students who may be listening to the recording. So we are now about 20 minutes from the end of our webinar. I wanted to welcome a few people who have just recently joined, so thank you for joining. And I also wanted to encourage anyone who's in the audience to put any questions they have into the Q&A. I hope we'll be able to get to them all. We'll certainly do our best. But I do have a few more burning questions to ask our three panelists today. So for those who don't know in the audience, the virtual internship program includes quite a lot of support. Sometimes we call it scaffolding, sometimes we call it program inclusions, but these are coaching calls and check-ins, and Misaki actually touched on a couple of the career competencies that we focus on, and I'm just really interested to hear from the three of you. How did they feel when you had the coaching calls and when you had this focus on those transferable skills, and did they help you make any career decisions, or how have they shaped your next steps, or any other anecdotes or stories you want to tell us around those transferable skills and career competencies? I don't mind which order we go in. Misaki, why don't you go first?
Of course. So as a non-native English speaker, I have good example of what I discussed in the coaching call. So I remember that when I first had my coaching call, I told my coach, like, I've never worked in a professional setting using English. I don't know what to do. I am so scared. And usually people tell me, you're fine, just be confident, but that's not the feedback that I find useful. And they really helped me set short-term and long-term goals and steps that I can work on to be confident in the first place. And I really act on it during this internship, and I was able to come out from the internship and just confidently say to the interviewer, I have worked internationally and I'm really confident in developing, great relationship with someone from different culture. And I think that was one of the biggest takeaway. And the coaching call really also helped me verbalize my own experience. Without that, I don't think I would be able to deepen my understanding in my own skills and experience. So in that way, it was extremely helpful.
Great, thanks, Misaki. Josh, how about you? How was your experience of the support and the coaching calls?
Yeah, I think following on from what Misaki just said about verbalizing your experience, I think the coaching calls were actually really good to develop self-awareness, which is a really crucial skill to have. But you can be right in the thick of work, or think that you want to follow a certain trajectory, or you're working on a project that you're really passionate about, and just taking that kind of scheduled few minutes back to kind of look at what you've done, like see like the impact that you've made, but then also actually like identify like through their support where you could add like even further value. Since like you might be from different cultures, speak different languages, have a completely different perspective, helps fill like a knowledge gap like for that company as well. So those are the things that I found like really useful, and then kind of scoring yourself based off of like specific markers on like communication. How's your timekeeping been this week? Like have you managed to finish the projects? Like almost keeping you accountable as well. Like Jack was talking about self-discipline before. It's really difficult sometimes to do that, and I'm someone with ADHD as well, so I live my life like quite sporadically. So having that actually was really useful in like centering me throughout the experience, because it was a regular touch point too. So yeah, they were really useful.
Well, I'm really glad to hear that. And over to you, Jack. How were they for you?
Yeah, they were great. I mean, coming from a business background in my bachelor's, you're often told, you know, a leader can be this, it can be this, it can be this. There's no one type. And this was great for me because it meant that I could explore many different options. But for a long time, I was never really sure of the type of leader I wanted to be. I was testing lots of different, you know, styles out, and combine that more recently with, you know, my experience abroad in developing countries, in developed countries. You know, I found that I had a lot of questions that I wanted to answer, whether it be about my career in terms of, you know, I love the UK, but I also love living abroad, you know, seeing as I've been away for so long now. Or, you know, I've seen this in developing countries, but, you know, this is how they act in developed countries, you know, which is the right one, if that's the type of word. So with the coaching call, it was great to kind of sound out those thoughts and feelings in terms of my career, asking, you know, am I making the right decisions almost? And, you know, they provided tangible help, such as sorting my LinkedIn out, going through my CVs, personal statements. And following those coaching calls, it was when I actually decided to apply for the United Nations, because I felt that, you know, it was definitely a career that I felt ready to step into. And obviously here I am today, a few months on. So yeah, definitely helpful for me.
Yeah, well, another opportunity to just say congrats, Jack, on the position you've got at the United Nations. Really, really great to hear it, and pleased that we were able to be a little tiny part of that journey. I'm gonna move on now to the general topic of remote work, and you know, obviously we have been through the COVID pandemic, huge shift in the way people are working. How do you guys all think that remote internships can prepare graduates for what lies ahead in terms of remote or hybrid or different ways of working? Maybe talk through a little bit, you know, either your actual experience or indeed what you think, you know, the program might offer those students who would be taking it in a year or two's time and then graduating into a world which may even have gone further than we are at the moment. Jack, why don't you go first?
So I guess I'm quite a good example because I work for the UN, which is a global organization, and the majority of the work we do is now virtual. You know, whether it's meetings with governments around the world or meetings on, you know, promoting electric mobility in cars, and we do an incredible amount online. So I'd start by saying that I think it's here to stay, and understanding the skills for working remotely is incredibly important. I mean, it took me a while to get used to. For example, you know, it can feel like a university assignment at sometimes. You know, there's no manager in the room or any colleagues, you know, that you can go and chat to. You're kind of just on your own typing away, and sometimes it feels indifferent to coursework. So there's definitely things in terms of discipline, but I'd also say, you know, you don't have feedback like you would in an in-person office. For example, even just something like a smile or body language can say a lot about, you know, in a meeting about how you're doing, or are you using the correct tone? And, you know, if someone's got their camera off or you're on the phone to someone, you don't always get that. So along those lines, I think, you know, now that the world is becoming more globalized and things are becoming more virtual, there will be more times when you're working with people from, Africa, America, Asia. And in terms of that feedback that I was just talking about, they may have different cultural norms or different ways of working, which may appear ignorant to someone from the UK or somewhere else, when to them it's perfectly normal. So I think, as well as understanding how to work remotely, I think an understanding of other people that you'll get through doing that is also incredibly important for a world that will be remote and virtual and increasingly globalized in the future.
Thanks, Jack. All the very important topics of global and increasingly remote covered there. So I really appreciate that. Josh, what are your thoughts?
I completely agree with Jack. To be fair, everything he said about that kind of intercultural communication, that awareness of other people. I mean, if there's one thing that you could be in the world, like if you could just be one thing, it's just kind. And that will genuinely get you very far, and that comes with an awareness of other people and understanding their emotions and backgrounds. I think in terms of remote work as well, I've actually never had a job that's been fully in person since graduating from university. I've always worked either hybrid, or now I work completely remote, so with colleagues up and down across the UK. So the virtual internship definitely helped in kind of allowing you to see okay, I've got my whiteboard here, here's how I need to structure my day, factor in inconveniences that can sometimes happen, or unexpected stuff to do with technology, whatever it may be. And yeah, speaking to people, staying in contact, that kind of hyper communication is really important. It's better to over communicate than not share anything at all. Yeah, I think Jack basically said everything.
No, I mean, you got some great ones in there just then, actually, Josh, and I might ask a follow-up question if I may. Are there any colleagues in your current company who haven't had much experience working remotely? Did you feel, I'm guessing you felt reasonably well prepared going into that remote work environment, but any points of comparison, I guess, from other students or other graduates who haven't had any exposure and maybe have found it tough, or has everybody found it easy?
Yeah, I suppose, well, I mean, actually that's one thing that is a really good point, actually, the expectations, or maybe some of the anxieties around remote working that some people might feel. Not everybody might have access to a separate working space from their living or sleeping space, and having to work remote. You can't see it here, but I'm technically sat in my bedroom, so I work and sleep in the exact same place. So the work-life balance and the boundaries can sometimes fade a little bit, but in having that remote experience, you're able to realize, oh, having this work-life balance is really important. I should be logging off at a certain point. If we are working flexible, having that communication with your managers. In comparison with other people, my company's quite young, actually, so there are a few people in kind of a similar situation to me, I guess. So there's not much difference, really, and I can't say it's really anything that we've ever spoken about, to be honest. But I think probably the work-life balance separation is probably the thing that I would advise on the most, that it's really important to have that healthy balance and maintain that throughout your career. And my first internship really helped me kind of figure that out. Even though I definitely wasn't perfect with my timekeeping at the time, I was able to make a few mistakes during that, but there were mistakes I could afford to make, whereas they might be a little stricter with me now if I was to be doing that in the full-time working world.
That's a really valuable viewpoint, Josh. Thank you. It's that almost a safe space where you can make a mistake, and at the end of the day, an apology and perhaps even some support from the virtual internships team, intern experience manager, will help to ensure that that's not a kind of a deal breaker. Misaki, over to you, and then I'm going to have just one final question, and then we'll turn it over to Q&A. So yeah, Misaki, anything?
Yeah. I would just agree with both of you, and I would say remote working is definitely a skill because I work 100% virtually. My current role, but my entry role was 100% in person. So I kind of experienced both of them and how different it looks like. But I would say to be able to use the time effectively, especially when you're working with people in a different time zone, you kind of need to be proactive and also be flexible and adaptable and anticipate the needs so that you don't waste any time. My pet peeve is just not like forgetting to mention something in the email or in a meeting and I miss that person until the next day, which is really frustrating. So I would say these kind of skills are going to be useful, whether it will be an in-person job or hybrid job. Everyone would like, all the people you work with to have flexibility, proactiveness, and these important soft skills. So I would say, yeah, doing that remote work will definitely be beneficial to increase your soft skills to a next level.
Great, thank you. All right, so my wrap-up question for you three before we turn over to the Q&A, where I can see there are a few questions, is if you could explain to your university or universities in general the positive impact that your internship has had on your career and your whole university experience, and if you could try and do it in about one sentence, that would be great. What would you say? Misaki, over to you.
Of course. So I would say I feel much better about the uncertainty about the postgraduate employment. And it really gave me confidence in my soft skills as well as hard skills that I gained from the university experience.
Great, thank you. Josh, over to you.
I think my virtual internship definitely, it helped to reconfirm like my love of media and that it is possible. I can achieve it. Like I can work within the media industry. It might be difficult to like aspire towards, but it was a really important first step to help get me there, especially as a first generation scholar.
Great. And Jack, over to you.
For me, I was quite lucky at university that I had a lot of international experience and internship experience. So I knew I wanted to work in Asia, but I just didn't know how to turn that dream into a reality. And as Josh just said, it reaffirmed that, it was a route for me, and it provided me with the skills and the experience to actually come to an organization like the UN and say, look, I have experience in this area. And I'll be able to contribute to your organization, and here I am today.
Amazing, thank you, Jack. All right, so I'm going to take a couple of the questions from the Q&A, and because of time, I might squeeze a couple of them together. I think there is one around how your employers in the virtual internships made efforts to integrate you into the company culture and try to avoid you feeling isolated. Did they do it? And if so, did they do it on their own? Did you have to ask for it? And did VI provide any, additional level of support? Anyone want to take that?
I would say I never felt isolated from the host company, and I think might be similar to the point that I made earlier, but you kind of need to be proactive when making connection with people that you work with. And I really like what Josh said about being kind to other people, or, share about your personal life a little bit if you want to. So I think that kind of proactiveness is needed, but my host company specifically was really inclusive, and I really felt connected to the company. And in terms of what the support that virtual internship offered, I really like that I have this extra touch point that I can freely share my thoughts. And this person's not working for the host company that I'm working for. So that was really nice as well.
Great, thanks, Misaki. Josh or Jack, did you want to add anything about company culture, whether they made you feel included, how much you had to ask for it?
I think just in addition to that, yeah, they made me feel very included. But it was also with the support of my colleagues that I was on the internship with as well. So the actual other interns, so I interned in China, and these other interns, they spoke Mandarin, or, they studied Chinese history and things like that. So it really helped to create that environment that, and to appreciate the culture a lot more. Just the other thing, in addition to mentoring, was the touch points with other individuals on workshops and things. So we had people like consultants come in who worked in China. We had a man who ran a business in China from the UK. And so it was interesting to get other perspectives on, people who worked in China and their experience as well.
Great. Josh, was there anything you wanted to add on that piece?
I suppose that I did my virtual internship at the peak of COVID, so I don't think mine might be too relatable, I suppose. But I did have to ask if there was any kind of company calls or stuff that I could get involved with. There was only one or two touch points in my company that could speak English, but they were really accommodating in their own way. They'd be FaceTiming me, they had their own smaller office that they'd all be working from and waving at me from. So that was quite cute, and it was nice to be involved in those more micro moments. But I believe there was also a lot happening at the time in the host country where my employer was, so I'm not going to hold anything against them. But yeah, no, it was nice.
Understood. Okay, I'm going to allow us, if you guys are okay, to overrun by 2 minutes, just so that we can get through a couple more of these questions. I want to say a huge thank you to Aravinda Ram from Botha University, who put a couple of great questions in there. But now I did want to move over to just very briefly touch on unpaid internships, because almost all of the virtual internships program is unpaid. And I just wanted to get each of your very brief thoughts on whether it's obviously a barrier. We'd love it if more companies did paid internships. Sometimes it can't happen because of visa regulations or because of credit bearing internships. In your guys' minds, is it a absolute barrier, or can it be useful in certain circumstances? And if so, kind of what are those circumstances?
I think that obviously it's great to be paid for the work you do. Coming from a young person from a lower socioeconomic background, the financing would be a big barrier. But I guess one way that universities could potentially help with that, if there are certain limitations, is potentially provide a bursary for students that are doing it, or just work in partnership with virtual internships or the companies themselves to kind of make those experiences a lot more open. It's a really interesting conversation, actually, because as a part of my role, literally just last month, I was invited to the House of Commons to speak to a minister of social mobility on young people and work and these types of issues. And it's something that came up, but obviously it's my internship wasn't paid, but I was still able to do it through enhanced support from the university. It was over the summer months, so it's definitely possible to do if you have other support means available.
Thanks, Josh. Anyone else want to add something on this topic before I ask my final hot question?
I would say, just to add to that, I would say it's called virtual internships, but for me, it was more than internship experience. And I definitely learned a lot from this experience, but also the opportunity to reflect on my skills in a way that I didn't know that I can. For example, there are 8 different competencies that I didn't think about, for example, and how I can display these skills as an intern. I wasn't, a manager or anything, so who wasn't running a team or anything, but as an intern, I was able to practice these skills and reflect on how much I gained confidence around these skills. So I would say it's called internship, but it was also a great learning opportunity.
Thanks, Misaki. Jack, just very briefly on this.
Yeah, just finally, obviously I'm an international student in Japan at the moment on my master's degree. So if I was to undertake paid employment with virtual internships, it would have caused real complications with things like visas, my student status. So actually, for me, it was almost a benefit that it was unpaid, because it was a very simple process to enroll. And I was able to do the internship, stress-free, without worrying about immigration or how it would affect my studies.
Great, thank you. So listen, I am hugely grateful for everybody's time, but I wanted to just ask one final question, which is one that we've got in the Q&A, and it's about, someone, Odongo Vincent, has said they normally have in-person internships, physical internships, due to the practicality of most of their courses. I just wanted to flip this around and say, what do you think, guys, is the most exciting or unlikely sort of development we'll see in the next 5 to 10 years? I'd say COVID has shown us that things like doctor's appointments, even the kind of clunky old NHS, can give me a virtual video doctor's appointment over the phone. What could you guys see as being something that happens remotely that doesn't happen now? And, sorry for putting you on the spot. This was not a pre-scripted question.
I mean, we're seeing so much advancement with AI. So I think just the affordabilities of AI and what that will actually be able to do, and like things that we'll be doing kind of day to day, will just intuitively be using AI for, whether it's compiling together like briefs, creating designs. I know it's something I'm keeping my eye on, like working in media and social media, but it's so important to see the pros of it. Obviously, it can boost productivity, and it's great to overcome like specific barriers and get information very quickly. But then the downsides of it too, like potential biases. Universities on this call might be feeling it as well, with like plagiarism and those types of topics too. So it'll be really interesting to see how AI plays out in the next few years, and whether it'll be an overall positive or net negative.
Yeah, brilliant. Jack, anything you want to share on this?
I think, yeah, AI as well. There's a lot of hate against things like ChatGPT at the minute, but people will say it's because, people don't know how to use it properly, how to leverage it in their jobs or wherever else. And I think just in that sense, we'll probably see a lot of careers turn towards actually understanding or controlling AI, and the outputs that has, and as opposed to actually inputting things, we're managing things from a much higher perspective. So, I mean, ChatGPT has come on so much in the few months since it's come out, so I dread to think in 10 years' time where we're going to be.
Yeah, absolutely. Topic of the moment. Misaki, anything that you wanted to add?
Yeah, so just to feed into what both of you said, I was just thinking it would be fun to think about what AI can't do. And obviously, like, AI is changing so much. Like, we were talking about metaverse like a while ago, and now no one's talking about metaverse, and we're talking about ChatGPT. So there are so much uncertainties around how it's going to play out in the education sector and in the workforce. So I think it will be important to think about, especially the entry-level job, which might be able to have a lot of influence from AI, because it has a speed, it has accuracy, it can consume so much data at once. So I think now it will be quite fun to think about what skills will be needed in 10 years, 50 years. Would it be creativity, proactiveness, ability to think ahead and anticipate people's needs? Like, are these skills going to be quite important? I personally think that it would be. So I think I would like to personally continue thinking about what AI can't do in the future. And like Jack said, how we should use AI in the future properly.
Really, really strong points there, Misaki, and I appreciate them. I'm super excited to see, the number of different roles that can be done and harness AI. And I think, to answer this person's question, there may be more and more that, even something that right now still seems intensely practical, like farming or driving, through autonomous vehicles, through robotics, or through a combination of those things with AI, with faster computations, better analysis. there'll actually be the chance to do a lot more work remotely, and we might be examining that manufacturing line from our laptop in our kitchen, for example. So anyway, I'm really aware that we've run over time. There is a recording available for anyone who already had to drop off. For those of you who hung on for that extra 6 minutes, I really appreciate it. Thank you very much. But a huge thank you to our 3 panelists who joined us today and gave us that extra time. Thank you all. And for those who, are just hearing about virtual internships for the first time, please get in touch. We've loved having you. Thank you very much, everybody. And thanks again to Kate and colleagues at VI.
Thank you.